Good afternoon, everybody. Perfect. Listen, we've got about 20 minutes to go through about 2 hours of content. I hope you guys are ready and holding on to your seats, all right? Now, how many of you know what a hype cycle is? Fantastic. So today, we're going to talk about the emerging technologies hype cycle. It's a bit of a special hype cycle that, most hype cycles have a topic in which we focus on. What's exciting about the emerging technologies hype cycle is we're focusing on what are going to be the most impactful technologies over the next 1 to 10 years. So we canvass the market. We look at over 2,000 unique technologies. And what we're looking for is patterns in the marketplace. We talk to venture capitalists to figure out where is the market willing to invest. We talk to vendors. And we want to understand what's on the long-term roadmaps, what's in their R&D labs. We visit academia. We want to understand what are the long-range research projects, what's the intellectual property that may be held up in that community. And lastly, we talk to end-user clients like yourselves. We want to understand what's going on in your innovation labs. And we triangulate that information to figure out what are going to be the most impactful technologies. So for those that are not familiar, that didn't raise your hand, maybe the 10% of you, very simply, the hype cycle tells us 4 key things. The first thing it tells us is the technologies. What are the technologies that are out in the marketplace? But 2, and most importantly, it tells us at which stage are these technologies in. We represent that in terms of hype. So when we look at the life cycle of a technology, we look at it as far as market adoption and the expectations you can get out of that technology. The third thing that we want to look at is the velocity, the speed in which this technology is maturing. And so that's a very important indicator, because what we want to understand is even though you might have an early stage technology, if it's accelerating faster its life cycle, you're going to want to stay on top of that technology. And lastly, we look at the impact that this technology will have on the marketplace. We do a broad general purpose impact. It'll be up to you to tailor that information for your company's strategy and your industry. So this is the emerging technology hype cycle for 2017. It takes us about 6 months to distill down those 2,000 technologies down to about 30 to 40. You'll notice something here. There's a lot on this side. Does that mean that you shouldn't pay attention to this hype cycle, that these technologies are way too early? Absolutely not. What we suggest is that companies of all sizes should be looking at the early warning signs of these emergent technologies on that far left-hand side. And look at your business and figure out what is your innovation strategy. If you are a company, or parts of your company, are creating new marketplaces, new ecosystems, you want to challenge your competitors, what is your zone in which you're going to pay attention to? Right here. Those are the go-to technologies. So companies like Starbucks, companies like Apple, companies like 3M, that's where they focus. If you are a fast follower, you're going to look at the next stage of technologies. So if you're looking not to create new marketplaces, but go into a crowded market, you're going to look at these emergent technologies. And lastly, if you are in an industry that's highly regulated, or your business is risk adverse, then you're going to look at some of these technologies here, from the trough of disillusionment over to the plateau of productivity. Okay? So the message here is it's not about what this hype cycle is saying. We're giving you the base data. It's really about your innovation strategy and how you want to solve business problems. Now, I could sit here for a couple hours and we can go through each one of these technologies, or I can make it a little bit simpler for us and actually distill out what are some of the key trends that we're seeing out of this hype cycle. And we see 3 trends. The first is artificial intelligence everywhere. And essentially what we're asserting here is that most, if not all, emerging technologies will be based on AI in some shape or form. You heard in the keynote a couple days ago that there will be both job creation and the shifting of workloads for our human resources. Keep in mind, the World Economic Forum said that by 2020, 2 years away, 5 million jobs will be shifted as a direct result of one of those emergent technologies. Second, transparently immersive experiences. Technology is going to move further and further to the edge. In your pocket right now, if you've got an iPhone or an Android device, you now have an augmented reality enabled device. Just like that. We're going to see more specialized chipsets move to watches, phones, tablets, sensors around us, to where you can push your solutions out to the furthest most edge. These are just some of those emergent technologies that are going to enable you to do that. And lastly, you're going to live in a new IT reality. To support these advanced technologies, digital platforms will be required. And there's a series of technologies which we'll talk about. So for today, what I want to do is I want to pick a couple of these technologies that we feel would apply to most of you, that might be a little exciting, walk through those, and give you an idea of how you can use these in your own business to figure out how would we distill those 30 to 40 down to the 5 that are most important to you. So let's start with AI everywhere. First and foremost, machine learning, which is a broad space. Many, many different implementations of machine learning. But what we see broadly across the market is this is a very unique technology in that it's at the peak of the hype cycle. And it's got a 2 to 5 year time to maturity. So if you are a highly conservative company, focused on technologies over here, those machine learning technologies are going to creep up on you. So get it on your roadmap. Like I said, there are many different styles of implementations around these technologies. Now, we see the market impact is highly transformative. So what does that mean? It means companies are using these technologies for unique competitive differentiation. Great example. There are retail stores that shall remain nameless that are putting cameras in mannequins, running controlled pilots to figure out real-time customer sentiment analysis. So you walk into the department store, you look at that nice dress, you got a look of disgust on your face. I hate that dress. I walk away. That store now knows how I felt about that merchandise. Oh, and they've got iBeacons throughout the store, so they know where I'm going. All of this being orchestrated through machine learning, tying that to their promotional systems. So now I'm in the sporting goods section, and they're giving me discounts to say, Mike, you need to come back over here. We got a better dress or a better suit for you to go take a look at. These examples that I'm going to go through are technologies that are already here today. This isn't Star Wars land. You guys can go there later. But these are things that are in real world production. Virtual assistants. We have a prediction that by 2022, your administrative assistants will go away and be replaced with virtual assistants. Listen, guys, we're already seeing it today. Call centers being significantly augmented by natural language processing. Paralegals. If you are going to college for that profession, I would strongly recommend you change majors. Domino's Pizza is a perfect example of this. Did you know that when Domino's Pizza said they are now a technology company and not a pizza company 4 years ago, that ever since then, their stock has outperformed Google, Amazon, Apple, consistently year over year, based on the investments and the innovations that they're making. And oh, by the way, they've got a virtual assistant app as well. And it's not going to be just the retail industry. It's not going to be the hospitality industry, but traditional industries like financial services, government. This is an example of Erica. So this is a virtual assistant from Bank of America that's here to essentially put a financial advisor in your pocket. So now you don't have to be Bill Gates going into the bank and getting the concierge service, but rather, you've got those recommendations now in your pocket, giving you new insights on your account. So the expectation for your apps that you're going to develop is that they are smart, that they're contextual, that they'll be useful to give you insights that you may not have expected. And that's a difference from today, where we look at a reactive report, a current situation. These technologies are changing the game in which they are more probabilistic in nature. They're giving you new and unique insights. So what I want you to take away from AI Everywhere is that it is truly the backbone of emerging technologies. And most likely, you've used AI within the past 30 minutes. Has anybody done a Google search in the past 15, 20 minutes? Yeah? Yeah? Looked at the weather report? Yeah. Used Siri? So what we want to do is we want to use these AI technologies as a source of inspiration for our future solutions. And like I said earlier, there are many of them in this category that I wish I had time to go through with you, but unfortunately I don't. Second major mega trend that we see is pushing compute to the edge and making it transparent. And so when you heard from the keynote presenters, you heard about making technology fluid, seamless, not even realizing that you may be using it. One of those technologies is augmented reality. We're seeing more and more use cases around the usage of augmented reality. And the difference between virtual reality and augmented reality is that virtual reality is giving you an immersive visual digital experience. You're trapped within that Oculus. Augmented reality is different in that it's giving you the digital overlay of the real world. Now, the power of these technologies isn't necessarily just AR, but it's also combining IoT sensors that are out in the wild, your wearable devices, and bringing a fully rounded experience of both an interactive physical world with a dynamic digital world. And so when Apple released iOS 11, what we found was, now, not only do we have AI everywhere, but we've got AR everywhere. Google quickly followed with their AR kit as well. And so we're seeing business applications that we haven't seen before. Companies like IKEA, you're shopping through their catalog, and you say, I kind of like this couch. What would that look like in my living room? Real dimensions, and you can see in the example they got lights, lamps, actual shading of the color of the objects in the environment in proportion. So you can imagine for industries like healthcare, where I'm doing things like molecular engineering, or if I'm a medical student and I don't like the smell of human cadavers, so why don't we just shift over to a digital human? And oh, by the way, the beauty of this is it's interactive. So if I'm building things like jet engines, I can actually simulate a running engine in augmented reality. Throw what-if scenarios against it to figure out if this happened, what would happen to that engine? Very, very interesting technology. Second, in this transparently immersive experience world is human augmentation. Human augmentation is one of those technologies that we've seen a significant advance from last year to this year, meaning more and more high-tech firms are investing in these technologies. Now, you as senior leaders within your organization, like with the other technologies, you're going to have potentially some social and ethical challenges that you may have to overcome with this particular technology. Now, we're seeing it as transformational in nature, more than 10 years out. However, we've got the technology used here today. So from either Sony or Samsung or Google X Labs, we've got contact lenses in which you don't need glasses for augmented reality. It's in your contact lens. Or maybe even creepier than the mannequins is with my contact lens, I can take pictures or record video, controlled from your phone. So we're looking at two major aspects of this human augmentation. One, to help supplement and enhance what we do, but also give us insights into us as well. So very powerful uses from a medical perspective. And if you are in the pharmaceutical industry, medical industry, these are powerful technologies because it's changing our interaction with physicians. In states like California, you can get prescriptions written to you based on at-home tests that you're taking using these technologies. That's a big step to not going to the doctor's office waiting in 3 queues, right? So many other technologies that we've included in this, technologies like 3D printing, different display technologies, brain-computer interface, smart dust, all sorts of really cool stuff. Third, digital platforms. So digital platforms, like I mentioned before, it's about changing your IT reality. So of all those technologies we just discussed, what changes will you need to make within your organization? And what we see is the prevailing trend is it's all about the platforms. One key technology, which I'm sure you've heard a lot about, is blockchain. While our conversation with blockchain started with financial services and cryptocurrencies, we're actually seeing much more powerful use cases in other industries. Take, for example, Toyota. They've got an autonomous vehicle. They want to make sure that those communications between that vehicle is unhackable, that we know that it's this car with this person in it, communicating with the roads, with other cars, with the government, with law enforcement, with the insurance company, in a secure and trustworthy way. Toyota's partnering with MIT to actually make that the default protocol for communication. Because you got to remember, there's really 3 key components of blockchain that makes it special. It's not necessarily the security component. We've got that today. We can secure a point-to-point transaction. What it's really about is that irrefutable record. Yes, this is Mike Walker from Gartner here doing X. Or if I'm in Honduras and I want to distribute land titles. Or if I'm the United States government, maybe I am investing in blockchain-enabled voting machines. Again, you can see the pattern here. The major inhibitor, why you see this technology 5 to 10 years, it isn't the technology necessarily. It's the laws. The regulations and the laws have been written for central choke points, and that's the challenge that we see in the financial service industry. It's not necessarily the technology itself. The last digital platform technology that I want to talk to you about is digital twin. And I hinted at this a little bit when I was talking about AR and the merged reality situation. Digital twins is essentially a concept that allows me to create a digital representation of a person, maybe that human cadaver that we talked about, a thing like a jet engine or a space shuttle or a road, or it could be your business process to be able to virtualize in a digital space your IT environment. So we see significant investment, especially in the manufacturing world, in the healthcare world, in the pharmaceutical world, in these particular technologies. So we see the impact being highly transformative. It's not quite there, it's not all together, because a lot of these technologies are assembled. So this is more of a pattern. But we've got a 5 to 10 year maturity. Now, 5 to 10 years here, as these technologies are being tested, that's another early warning sign for you. If you're in these industries and you've got this rate of acceleration of this technology, this is one you're going to want to put on your watch list. Many, many other technologies on that list that are going to be highly, highly impactful for your internal IT organizations. One of which, quantum computing. Especially if you're in highly secured environments. It's not about those bits of encryption that's really protecting you in that SSL transaction. It's really about having a powerful enough computer to break that algorithm. The fear that the military has, large financial services institutions have, is that when quantum computing becomes pay by the drink, we've got new security threats. We've got to revisit how we encrypt information. And that's on the practical end. Remember, we're moving into a cloud first or a cloud only environment. So the reason why these technologies are maturing at the rate in which they're maturing is because they're not being deployed in your data center. They're being deployed in someone's cloud. So you want to make sure you keep that in mind as you're evaluating these technologies. We're like the App Store here. We got tons of research for you, right? So the hard part about this isn't necessarily identifying these technologies. We do a great job of identifying those for you. However, the challenge that most of our clients have is, how do I take those 30 to 40 technologies and how do I translate that into the 5 that are most important to my business and where I want to go? Lots of great resources for you. These are just a sample of some. So with that, thank you guys very much for your time. Hopefully this has been useful for you. Thank you.